All right. All right, my name is Dave from Black Leadership Analysis, and I want to talk to you about Dr. Umar Johnson's supposed school scam. So, Umar Johnson, over the years, has collected money to start a school for black boys. Um, so it's going to be a school for black boys, and it's going to be troubled about black youth. And in the last couple of years, he has gone out here. I have one listener right now. That's awesome. Say hi in the comment box. Um, but he's gone out here and he's been looking for a school for a few years now. And so I've been looking on the internet to see how much money he actually has. And it looks like the highest estimate I could find was he has $1 million. The lowest estimate I could find says he has $250,000. And he's trying to go out and buy a school. And everybody's claiming that he's scamming the people and taking all the people's money and things like that. But from what I can tell, like that's just not true. For example, started looking up commercial properties. I live in Washington, D.C., so I looked up commercial properties in Washington, D.C. So $1 million can get you a carry-out, like Chinese food restaurant storefront. That's $1 million. And that's in like an okay neighborhood. It's not even the best neighborhood. So, I mean, I couldn't find abandoned schools online. But I mean, if a takeout restaurant's $1 million, you know, a school's going to be, even a dilapidated school's going to be $4 or $5 million. Now, I work in building maintenance myself. That's one of the things. I'm an engineer. So, if you've ever actually had to renovate a building, you can spend, you know, $100,000 just to analyze what needs to be done. Not even actually complete it, but just analyze what needs to be done. You can spend $100,000. So an old building like that is going to have asbestos in it. You're probably going to have to look at, take out. It's definitely got lead paint, you know, and then you have to bring the building up to code. And the reason it's dilapidated and nobody is buying it, more than likely the reason for that is that the repairs on the property cost so much that after you do them, you don't make money on the property. Like if it wasn't abandoned, like if it's been abandoned, it's because people have seen it on the market and haven't bought it. So they haven't bought it because they knew it was going to cost more to renovate it than the property is worth. So, you know, Umar Johnson's running around here. Let's say he has the high estimate of $1 million. Well, he's been working on finding a school for a year. And the way he should have done that really is to hire somebody who's like a structural engineer who can go and really renovate and see how much it's going to cost in the end to renovate. So, I mean, a person like that for a year, that's going to be like $120,000 for a year. You know, that's how much structural engineers with 10 years experience make. So, I mean, this idea that he's got $250,000 so he should have been able to buy a school, I mean, that's just kind of silly. That's not taking into account he's got to hire HR people and things like that to see what kind of personnel he needs and how to go out fishing for personnel. Like this idea, he's got like a Hotmail account and he says, you know, anybody who wants to work for my school can just send me a line. Like that's not going to work. Like what I'm getting at is I hear a lot of black folks talking about we don't need government. You know, we should just do for ourselves. We should just pool our resources together and crowdfund. Well, this is what crowdfunding looks like. Like, if you're just going to try to crowdfund to buy the block back and improve your schools, this is where you end up. It's like a guy on YouTube, you know, trying to solicit donations. He gets $1 million over 10 years because going back to a guy named Leon Honor, he pulled up him asking on Twitter for donations back in 10 years earlier. So he's been looking for 10 years. He's got $1 million at the most, at the best. And, you know, we just now are buying a dilapidated school that we still got to renovate. So understand that if you just want to crowdfund everything, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to spend all your time hound dogging this guy about his money, how he's appropriating funds or misappropriating the funds. And let me tell you, man, like, this idea that he's just misappropriating funds or messing off with the money, like, if he's spending the kind of time it would take to run that school or to build that school, that's a full-time job. He's not going to have time to do other stuff. And when he doesn't have time to do other stuff, he is going to, you know, since he doesn't have time to do other stuff, he's going to have to live off some of the donation money. And so he's got $1 million over 10 years. It's $100,000 a year. Like, he lives in Philly. So that's just how much it takes to live in Philly. So, I mean, if he doesn't have any money at the end, I mean, after 10 years of doing this, I mean, I kind of don't blame him. I mean, anybody could spend $1 million over a 10-year span of time. If you got a middle-income job, that's about how much you spend. So, I mean, this idea that he's just messing off with the money is crazy. And there is no one man who's qualified to build an entire school. Like, you need, like I said, structural engineers to come in there and see what needs to be done. You need foremen that can manage the labor crews. Then you need human resource people to actually headhunt and find you people, not just say, I got an email address, so just send me people into my inbox. I mean, that's not recruiting, you know. You're just going to get, you know, people's cousins sending you emails and things like that who aren't qualified. Like, qualified people that's going to take to run a school of at-risk boys who need more resources. Those people are expensive and it's hard to find them. So you're going to need not only human resource people to go find those people, you need money reserved to pay these people, possibly pay travel expenses if they need to move into Wilmington, because he's buying into Wilmington, Delaware. Like, it's crazy to think he's just like messing off with the money. Now, Umar Johnson hasn't handled a lot of things well. Like, I would never give him money because I saw him on a YouTube video cursing at his baby's mother and telling everybody on the YouTube channel where she lives and where she works, so we can all go harass her, which I didn't think that was good at all. I've heard him disparaging women on online too many times, and even though he says he loves Africa and loves black people, he's always disparaging women. I don't think, seeing his temper on many of these live streams, I don't think he's really the right person to be around little kids, especially at-risk kids who are going to test your patience. So if you can't even get off a live stream without cursing somebody out and calling them a thought, you definitely don't need to be around at-risk youth. But, you know, this idea of we can crowdfund and build a school, well, this is what it looks like. Understand that. So if you're not into getting in this and getting the political game with us and trying to get the government to rebuild our schools and do it right, like, this is how you're going to be spinning your wheels all the time. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't room for African-centered education that's wholly funded by black people. But it has to be something that's supplemental. It can't be something that is like the crux of the education. So if you had all the kids, right, and you had good public schools, you concentrated on the government funding the public schools and getting good people in the public schools, in the churches, mosques, and community centers, you can have Afrocentric education where you teach black history, self-pride, the nutritional science he talks about, agroeconomy. If you have people around you that know about that, you know, that's how you can do that. Now, that's a better plan than just simply trying to crowdfund the whole school and buy dilapidated schools and try to fix them up. And Umar Johnson's talking about just come and volunteer. Like, one thing about volunteering is, like, people only volunteer so much, and they don't volunteer things they're an expert at. Like, anything you spent money to learn how to do, like engineering or teaching, nobody's going to volunteer that time. So just hoping that you get volunteers and things, that's just kind of silly. I mean, you really need to understand that you're going to have a limited amount of participation that's just voluntary. So But yeah, I mean, Umar Johnson, I don't think he's trying to scam us. I think that he's out here. I think he's doing the best he can with the little bit he's got. $250,000 when you're talking about buying a school is nothing. Or even $1 million when you're trying to buy a school. That's just nothing. So we got 3 people in the live stream. What's y'all's names? Y'all want to give any comments or anything? You want to talk? Any of the 3 people on here? This is the first time I've done a live stream and had some folks on here, so it's going to be interesting. Especially if y'all want to talk back and everything like that. But just in general with Umar Johnson, I think a lot of his methodology and philosophy is just really antiquated. It's very much old school, kind of patriarchal. The man should be the head of the household and women should be subordinate kind of a thing. And, you know, that hasn't worked in mainstream America. So it seems like it's silly to like try to force it on Black America, who never really had that. We've always had a matriarchal society. And, you know, it works for us, you know. And I think that Black women in the Black community in general are more respected than white women in the white community. Even though Black men are just vilified every time we do make a mistake or say something wrong. I think Black women in the Black community, they're a lot more respected, as in they have power to decide how things are going. You know, yes, you might have people calling them out their name in a rap song, but as for all them rappers, I guarantee you, if you go to their house, their wives run the house. Every one of them rappers. So I think a lot of Black men have a lot more respect in general for women's opinions than white guys. Like white guys, I know a lot of white guys. If a woman's talking, their eyes glaze over. Like, it's not even a thing for them to have their eyes glazed over. So for us, we're always communicating with women, unless it's a woman who's just proven herself to be just completely irrational and emotional. So, I don't necessarily agree with him always trying to push for people to be married. I think that marriage as an institution at this point is starting to not prove itself. Like, people aren't as into just getting married like they were 20, 30 years ago. And I think Black people aren't any different. So we have all these different types of relationships we're working with now. And I think it's a good thing that people aren't just staying in marriages so they can not ruin it, so they can be part of a community or not be ostracized in a community. So I just really think it's kind of antiquated for him to be pushing just one type of relationship. And I also don't agree with him really being disparaging towards gays. The DSM-V, which is basically the Bible for diagnosing in psychology, hasn't considered homosexuality a mental illness since '76. So when he's talking to people about homophobic stuff or anti-LGBT stuff, understand that's just him talking. That's not backed up by modern psychology. And I think it's really important, if you're billing yourself as a psychologist, to really go back and be using modern psychology as your basis. Like, if I get up here and say I'm a Baptist preacher, then I have to be using the Bible to back up what I'm saying. I can't just be a guy out here, you know, saying I'm a Baptist preacher and then saying you don't need to get married before you have sex. Like, you got to be true to what you're coming into. So, and then I also am worried about him telling everybody he's a doctor when he hasn't done a thesis, and he won't say where he went to school. And then he had the court case where he had to admit that he wasn't a doctor. So, yeah, Umar Johnson has a lot of problems, but all his problems and lies aside, all that aside, this school project, he simply just doesn't have enough money coming in to really do it. Like, yes, I mean, I'd be surprised if he really has enough money for a down payment. And it's not because he's messing off with the money. It's because he hasn't got enough of it at one time to really make a move. So, well, that's all I got to say. So.